Welcome to the Experience Gap, the insight shop to the rescue, where we turn customer nightmares into teachable moments for businesses. Each week, we bring you real stories of service breakdowns, highlight the moments that matter, and equip businesses with strategies to delight their customers. I'm Kate Complin, the owner of the Insight Shop. I created this podcast to give customers a voice, to share their stories and frustrations in hopes that companies would take notice, listen, and take action, as customers are your most important assets. Today I'm joined by Beth Smits. Beth, it's great to have you. As a consumer, what does a truly great experience look like to you?
I was thinking a lot about this when you and I first started chatting about this podcast, and I would say there's three words that stand out for me. It's proactive, it's thoughtful, and it's attentive. I think regardless of whether it's an email, a phone call, or an in-person dialogue conversation, if you pay close attention, not just to what I'm saying, but my body language, my reactions, what my face is saying, maybe that it's different from what my words are saying, I think that really is the epitome of being able to deliver a great experience. I think it's context of the situation as well as the content itself. And that should provide enough information for whoever is delivering the service to be able to create a great experience. So I think you have to be willing to step outside of your little teeny tiny box that is your role in the broader experience and be willing, to help your customer in whatever way they need to be helped.
Yeah, that's a great example. I also understand that you had a recent experience with your father when trying to get a test scheduled for his upcoming appointment. Tell the audience what fell short, what happened, and how it impacted you and your father. And as you're telling the story, help the audience understand what were those moments that really mattered to you and your father and what had to go right, and what were some of the pain points you experienced.
Yeah, thanks, Kate. This was pretty recent, really over the last, call it 6 to 8 weeks. And my father's in his 80s, right? So he needs a little bit of support maneuvering through this debacle of primary care and specialists and insurance and, the places where you go to get scans or x-rays or tests. It's like nothing is easy in this new world. And it was a maze, and no one was talking to anybody throughout the entire process of trying to get these tests scheduled. It was just a nightmare. All he needed to do was have the doctor approve these tests that he needed. The tests were scheduled. He got an email that said, "Oh, by the way, the test's been canceled because we need a peer-to-peer review with the doctor, and you have 48 hours to do it." And my father's like, what are you talking about? I don't understand. So he proactively calls the doctor's office, even though the insurance company and the testing center should have been doing that. But no, he had to do it. You can't talk to the person at the doctor's office who manages these approvals and these peer-to-peer reviews. They literally are not, you're literally not allowed to talk to them. So it had to be email. So he could talk to the receptionist at the doctor's office who said, "Oh yeah, I'll send an email to the person who does this." 2 days later, no peer-to-peer review, no contact from the doctor, no follow-up emails, no nothing. So he can't get the test scheduled. He had to reschedule his doctor's appointment to review the test because the tests weren't going to be done. He couldn't get a hold of the doctor or the doctor's support staff to actually get the test rescheduled. Ultimately, he had to go back to his primary care physician, who turned out to be like super helpful, apologetic. "Let me find you a new specialist. I will write orders. They probably won't get approved, but I'll write orders for you just in case. I have this personal relationship with this doctor, so let me help facilitate it." But it took 6 weeks to get all the way back to basically the beginning. And his next appointment isn't for another 6 weeks. So it's concerning, right? That's a 3-4 month delay in something that, if there's a serious problem, now you've delayed the whole process 6 months or 3 months and probably 6 by the time you get everything figured out and the next round of tests done. So The things that stood out to me, the complete lack of respect for my father as a patient, the complete lack of follow-up, the complete lack of ownership in the process was horrifying. I was just horrified. The inability to have a conversation with people who could actually solve the problem. And frankly, who knows if they could have solved the problem? Maybe that's why they didn't want to talk to anybody, because they didn't want to solve the problem. But it was egregious and it was frustrating. And my father's not a dumb guy, and I'm not a dumb person. And the fact that we could not maneuver our way through this maze of crazy was frustrating and horrifying. And this was just to get some tests done.
Right.
So I really, it was, the whole thing was a nightmare. And I'm just glad he was able to go all the way back to his primary care physician and get something scheduled. I would say the biggest thing that I point to is how, if this is the kind of problem that we're having for a test, I can't even imagine what the broader set of, humans who are trying to deal with this, how they are maneuvering through this situation. So it was tough. And I hope the next round of appointments will deliver better care for him.
Yeah, absolutely. And looking ahead, how could the experience in scheduling your father's tests been improved? Like, what does that look like for you? What do you expect to happen when you call to schedule a test for your father? What should have happened?
Yeah, I mean, if nothing else, I would imagine. And so if I put like my process and ops hat on, which is what I used to do, for work, I would say there needs somebody at some point in the process, and I would assume with the doctor, would take ownership of the patient's experience, because they are ultimately the owner of the patient relationship, right? These test companies, God love them, they just cycle people through. I mean, I've had x-rays done, and it's just like one after the next after the next. All they care about is how many people can they get in, and do they use the right insurance codes so they can get their payments, right?
Yep.
That is not where this lives. It has to live, I think, with the doctor. The process has to be clear, and there has to be, I think, a sense of ownership of that experience end to end. And that certainly didn't exist with this specialist. Not one iota. Not one. I've got to believe the cost. It would pay for itself with the speed with which you could move through the end-to-end process of having this done, and your effectiveness at dealing with patients. Investing in that, it's got to be way less expensive than what the last 8 weeks have been like. I don't get it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you make a really good point too, when a lot of companies don't understand the huge expenses that they're creating and the huge costs by not having an efficient process. I mean, imagine all of the people that had to be involved to just get to the point of not even getting your father scheduled, right? He had to go all the way back to his primary care physician. And had they been able to make this seamless, like the doctor he saw can schedule the test, your father has a date and time he goes there, it happens immediately, so his health is not at risk, and that, the company saves a ton of money and your father gets taken care of. So I'll leave you with this statistics. TCN's third annual survey from 2023 found that 73% of consumers will abandon a brand after just one negative experience. And in your father's case, sometimes people feel like, well, this is my health insurance, this is a place I go. There's still choices. So consumers do have choices on, okay, I'm going to navigate through this journey for this particular health issue I have. But in the future, when something comes up, I'm going to look to see what other doctors are in the network, what other clinics are in the network. And then also for businesses, acquiring a new customer can be 5 to 25 times more expensive than retaining an existing customer. So not only are these hospitals and healthcare systems going to lose a patient, they're spending a lot more money to gain new ones. Also, according to FlexPoint in 2025, the probability of selling to an existing customer is 60 to 70%, compared to just 5 to 20% for a new prospect. So if these hospitals and clinics are taking really good care of their patients, they're going to keep coming back for things that maybe are not a huge issue, but they have a small concern, versus I have a small concern, that was a nightmare. I actually don't want to go see anyone. And then now my care, is going to cost a lot more and I'm potentially at more risk. So making an investment in creating great experiences for your customers and for your company will leave the companies with a much greater ROI. So Beth, I want to thank you for sharing your story, and thanks to the listeners for tuning into the Experience Gap, the Insight Shop to the rescue, helping businesses turn frustration into delight, one experience at a time.
Thanks, Kate. That was a lot of fun.
Thank you.